Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about compensation, one of my favorite topics, and I hope it's a favorite topic of you. I've got somebody who focuses his whole career on these issues, sales operations, how to get the things working within sales, get all this technology and compensation plans, the administrative side of sales that keeps the trains running on time, so that the salespeople are not bogged down with all of this effort, that somebody has it all structured and put into place. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. If you haven't checked out the past few episodes, I've really been doing a lot of work on mindset, emotional intelligence, kind of the softer, less tangible sides of sales, but yet super important, because I'm starting to learn that if you don't have the right mindset to begin with, the skills, the techniques, the strategies and stuff all get clogged up, fogged up, and do not work right. So let's get into the interview. Before we do, I want to make sure you're checking out Co-Video. Video emails are the way to go. It's the way to break through today. Everyone's talking about video. This is kind of a big year for video in every way. Text is just too time consuming, too verbose sometimes, and it all looks the same. So check out covideo.com and tell them you heard about it on the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Let's get into the interview. Also, check out Pipedrive. There's a coupon code, Brutal Truth, all one word. You get 60 days free, and it only CRM, but it has all of those smart email things that you want. Open notification, click notification, and your calendar link. So it has all of those things built into it already. So you get your email, your calendar, and your contact information and your history of your accounts all in one. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end and give you an update on the courses. Here we go. Hey, Dana, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a practice leader for Serious Decisions. I run a sales operations practice. I lead a team of analysts, and all we do is research on sales operations and more recently on revenue operations. I've been in sales operations for myself for the last 19 years and have worked for mostly CSOs and CROs in being their right-hand person to help them lead the sales organization. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think this would be a great topic because it's becoming more and more important, operations. And how do you define it?
Well, with sales operations, we released a piece of research at Serious Decisions a few years ago called the Serious Decisions Sales Operations Sunburst Model. And we define the 7 accountabilities for sales operations. The big one is really setting the sales strategy and the plan and working with the CSO or the CRO and helping them basically negotiate with finance and also ensure that they're working closely with marketing and HR and the other organizations that touch sales. So in sales operations, most of the time we've got MBAs or we've got finance or operations backgrounds, and we try to bring that level of expertise to the CSOs to even the scales between most specifically sales and finance. And one big way to do that is through strategy and planning. And included in that is sales compensation design. We know that if finance is the organization that's basically setting the compensation plan, they tend to focus a little bit more on cost containment and really keeping things light for the sales force. So we focus on trying to make sure that it's motivational in addition to being something where it's cost effective as well.
Because certainly over the last few years, that's kind of got a little out of hand, focusing on the containment versus the upside.
Oh, it really, anytime you walk into a sales organization for the first time, I generally look at the sales compensation plan. And if I found that it's been designed solely by finance, it's generally pretty onerous. And they design it because there was one bad sales rep out there that did something terrible. Therefore, they try to punish the whole sales organization with it. And that's a bad thing.
Or they did something amazing.
Or they did something amazing and it cost the company a tremendous amount of money and they love the results, but they hate the commission payment.
And that's it. And I think that is one of the main ingredients because it kind of goes mad in a snowball. When I got into sales a long time ago, they'd over-assign quota maybe by 5-10%. And today, it seems it's like 50, 100, 150%.
And you know why they do that too, Brian, is because they don't understand the cost of attrition while they're going through their models. The research that we've done is the optimum amount of overassignment is 10%. If you start to go above that, then you start to affect attrition. And when you have attrition, then you've got uncovered sales territories. Most companies say that it takes 6 months to ramp up a new rep, but it's really more like 12 to 18 months. You've got the cost of going out there and try to find the top talent. And then you have to train them and onboard them. If they would only take into consideration that attrition cost, they would be a little bit less eager to move things around on a spreadsheet because they know what it would end up costing them in the end.
And it's just gone mad because every level it goes down. And I've experienced it, from being on the board of a company where they take the number that they want to go, and the CEO gets 10% on top of that. The VP of sales gets, another 10%. Then the sales leaders get 10% on that. And all of a sudden, for everybody to make their number, the company would be doing 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and it stacks up. If you put 10% on top of 10% on top of 10%, by the time you get down to the last person, they've got exponential quota over assignment. And what ends up happening is at the end of the fiscal year, you've got the CEO and the chief sales officer in front of the company saying, hey, we had an awesome year. We made our number. And the reps are looking around at each other saying, hey, we didn't make our number, but you did. How is that possible?
Yeah.
And they end up just costing themselves in the end. It's a really short-sighted strategy to go overboard with overassignment.
You got 3 people going to club.
Yeah, 3 people going to club, and one of them happens to be the CSO and 2 their direct reports. So.
Yeah. Now, where do you draw the line between what is the CSO's job and what's the operations job? Is that a clear distinction?
It's pretty funny. Well, I've got a military background. I started my career as a military officer, and you can't argue with a model that's been around for 300 years that's rarely been changed. And if you look at military structure, it's remained relatively stable. And every commanding officer in the military has an operations officer behind them.
Yeah.
And that person's really the chief of staff. So I have conversations with CSOs and with operations professionals. They're probably in 80% of the same meetings all together all the time. And you think about the role of the commanding officer as the person that's supposed to set the strategy, and then the executive officers to make sure that it gets executed. And in cases, we also advise on the strategy as well. So there's a ton of overlap out there. And I think you find people like me that just love being that second person in charge and to be the one to support the CSO and making them successful. And in my career, I've made some CSOs tremendously wealthy, and that's really rewarding for me. And of course, there's benefit to me too, because I get to be part of the action and I get to be part of sales. I love being around salespeople. I love inspiring them and helping them do what they do.
And I've worked at companies where that role either didn't exist or it was more of a pure administrative role, somebody with no sales experience or acumen who just managed the forecast, hounded the reps, expedited things, scheduled things. And all that work kind of got pushed down to the field reps. And, every time you add something to a salesperson's day, that's revenue that's not going to be attended to.
I completely agree. And I think a really great sales operations leader will create a board of advisors for themselves. And it's the group of individuals inside of the sales organization who they trust. For me personally, I would go out there and I would find who the top reps were. And I would ask them to sort of advise me on what their issues were and how I could help to solve their problems. A couple of cardinal rules is never go off to the sales organization and ask them for information that should be readily available somewhere else. So if you're asking them to fill out spreadsheets and complete emails when you should be able to go into the CRM system and find it yourself, then don't do that. And if you have to do it once, then fix the problem so you never have to do it again. Don't put additional burden and additional work on them. You have to be a great sales operations leader, you have to love salespeople. You have to appreciate their struggle. And you have to figure out ways to help make them more productive, because that's what we're really there for. And I'm sure in your career, you've probably seen bad sales operations leaders, those administrators who thought their job was to extract information from them and to make their lives worse.
Oh, yeah. I've had it in the case where they were the only people authorized to issue quotes.
Right.
And all of a sudden that becomes a bottleneck because they're getting a bagel toasted and I'm in a car waiting to get a quote and I could do it in 5 minutes. It's going to take them 35, to look asking for zip +4. And I go, we're not mailing them anything. It doesn't matter. It's just a lot of frustration. And I think today what's happening is there's all this technology pounded on them. Which,
yeah, there's an overabundance of technology, and it's easy to try to go out there and find a solution that they think can solve all these problems, and then just you do it with the idea of, hey, I think I could extract even more information out of my salespeople by having them work with these additional tools. And I think a bad sales operations leader will do that to try to make their own lives easier. And then, not to focus too much on the bad sales operations leaders, but I've seen the ones that look at what sales reps are making and they get envious of the compensation levels where they see them. And that's a terrible place to be.
And it's understandable, because
it is, yeah.
There's a certain element to sales that is luck and time.
But they're never envious of the years where the reps are making zero because they're having a bad year. So there's so many ups and downs to sales that you have to be willing to take into consideration and to accommodate.
Yeah, they're never at the airport at 4 a.m. on a Friday.
No.
Trying to get the next flight out to, beg and plead to get the order through before the end of the quarter.
That's right. So in your experience, what's been your interaction with sales operations? Has it been positive, negative, neutral?
It's been all over the map. I was mostly a startup guy, so it was kind of skinny. And then, I'd be through an acquisition with a huge company, one of the biggest. And then it became, and I was a first line manager. Then it became almost my whole job was just getting orders through, compensation plans done. And the onus was kind of on me. So I certainly appreciate it. And I'd always would encourage the VP of sales, hey, let's get somebody to do this. Because it is a real role. And, I've been out of it for a while, but I certainly see the need. Because if the sales leader, the CSO, takes it on, it's just too much work.
So I've been doing it for 19 years, and I realized I was having some success when I saw people who were sales reps or sales managers who had left companies and gone on to be promoted into sales executive roles. And then they would call me to ask me to go and be their sales ops leader. And to me, that was the ultimate compliment because they saw value in what I did when they were not part of the executive team. That was validation that I had done my job and I'd made their lives easier. And then they wanted to bring me on board to help do what I had done for them for the reps that they now led and managed. And I think that's the pinnacle of success for any sales or revenue operations leader, is that you're recognized for someone that helped make people's lives easier within sales organizations. And actually, your actions had a direct impact on overall company results, and you moved the needle for them.
And that's it, because I spend too many days of the quarter sitting in a hotel conference room with the sales VP and somebody who was the forecast Nazi, and we go through each deal, real gory detail, and it would all be forgotten in about 48 hours.
Yeah. And you mentioned, a couple of things. I was at a conference in New York City a couple of days ago, and somebody asked one of the panel leaders, hey, what are the attributes you look for in a sales enablement leader for the company and a sales operations leader for the company? And the number one attribute that they mentioned was having empathy for sales and what they go through. And I think that's incredibly important. Now, I've been that forecast Nazi in some cases. And in some cases, you have to be, because there are reps out there. Look, if they can't answer basic questions about the deal, about the opportunity, if they can't represent firsthand the interactions that they've had and where they stand, then that's a pretty bad sign.
It is.
Yeah.
And you wrote a great post about don't ask reps about probability.
You remember. It's funny too. I just put something up on LinkedIn today, and artificial intelligence is a conversation that comes up a lot. And I was with a bunch of professionals about 18 months ago, and I'm not a baseball fan. And they were all data scientists and leading VCs in the San Francisco area. And I glanced over at the screen as we're having a conversation. We were in a hotel suite. And I noticed that there was a new dimension of baseball, that there was a robot umpire that was calling balls and strikes. I'm like, that's amazing, because now they can do it with a fair bit of accuracy. And if you go and you do the research, you'll find that the umpire's inaccurate, or they get it wrong 48% of the time. They call balls when they're strikes or strikes when they're balls, and they actually widen the strike zone, and they're calling it incorrectly. So if an umpire is wrong 48% of the time after the event, the pitch is the event. Imagine that we go back to sales reps and we expect them to be 95% accurate 90 days out in advance of a quarter without any kind of assistance whatsoever.
When they especially have a personal win in it, either by keeping their jobs or keeping their manager off their back or outside of the deal.
Oh, absolutely. I say that we and reps, I should say sales leaders they get excited when I tell them this. I said, but we ask reps to lie about their
Of course we do.
And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, how many times have you had a rep give you their forecast at the beginning of the quarter and it's way off their number, and say, I can't accept these numbers. Go back and rework the numbers. And they just come back and tell you whatever you want to hear anyway.
Yep.
So I've seen artificial intelligence gather better information for reps, because we over rely on intuition to call a number, and we're all biased, all of us, sales ops, sales enablement, the sales reps themselves. But now the artificial intelligence solutions are going out there and reading all these different data signals, not just the firmographic information of who's the account and how many people do they have working there, are they publicly or privately traded, but they look at history of, hey, we've had deal sizes like this before, and here's the accuracy rate, and we know the personas of the individuals, that buying unit that's involved, and we know what the success rate is there. They'll take additional calculations like, hey, what happens if the chief procurement officer appears in the opportunity? It's literally making reps' lives easier. I think it's really transformational, and I think it's going to make things better for reps, because we're not going to ask them to put their necks out any longer, alone anyway.
Well, that's it. It can take in so many of those variables that aren't just kinesthetic feelings or butt covering or, planning purposes. And, that article really hit me, because I can't tell you the number of meetings I sat. What's your commit? And what's your gut? And all these things that are 90 days out, where, we just got off of a quarter. The manager just came back from vacation. You've got a flight at 5:00 and you want to get out of that room as fast as you can. And you basically say whatever they want to hear.
Absolutely.
And it helps nobody. The company doesn't change its plan based off of it. And then it just becomes this torture process, and nobody's being helped.
Absolutely true. And then you ask them, what's your commit? And then they'll give you that. And you say, okay, what's your blood commit? Like the first one wasn't good enough.
Which one can I hold your kid against?
Right. It's sort of a ridiculous. Well, the purpose of forecasting, there's a number of different purposes for it. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that it's solely about predicting the future, because it's not only about that. Some of it is predicting the future so that you can gain some credibility with the stockholders and with the board to let them know that you know what you're doing. But part of it's also about communication on that weekly basis to get information flowing backwards and forwards between managers and reps, and understanding what's happening so that they can coach reps on what their experience has been. But the last part, and probably the one where most sales leaders put the emphasis, is on creating a compelling event to motivate reps to take more actions to close deals by the end of the quarter. So they know if you've got 90 days to do it, they're going to put pressure on you to try to get you to accelerate those deals.
And I think an operations person can give a better coaching in some cases, because they don't have that line responsibility, meaning that the rep doesn't report to the operations person.
Yes.
But the questions. If someone says it's in procurement, okay, who in procurement are you talking to? Well, nobody yet. Well, how do you know it's in procurement? Well, I emailed them the quote. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean much. the little acid tests of really understanding where a deal is.
So what I'm seeing happen because of technology is that those conversations and those questions are getting answered by the technology. So because we're able to track what happened with the email and also what happened with meetings, and in some cases, you've got solutions that are going in there and actually listening to conversations and testing for things like sentiment and looking for the agreements that were made and whether or not those agreements were being followed up on. We're spending less time in sales operations trying to gather that information, trying to interpret that information, and more time presenting it to reps and to the sales managers so that they can take action based upon the information. So using your example of, is it in procurement? Well, we can tell without asking anyone if it was emailed to someone in procurement. We can tell if they opened that email. We can tell if they forwarded that email. And if you've got a contract lifecycle management solution out there, you can tell what different lines of the contract have been interacted with.
That's a great point, because I think that the next level, not just AI, but also KPIs that are based off of quality instead of just quantity.
That's right. Yeah. And I've heard some vendors say our goal is to make the sales rep the CEO of their own territory. And I think that's brilliant because in sales ops and rev ops, we've spent way too much time extracting information from reps, gathering that information and then representing it back to the board and to the executives, but not pushing that intelligence back down to the sales rep so that they can make better decisions. And I think that's a big change that we're seeing happen.
It has to happen, because I think, that this advent of, hiring college kids to get meetings, and even the inbound marketing to create all of these leads and incentivize marketing to get quantity. But then all of a sudden now we put it into a system and everybody has to process it, regardless of the quality of it.
Right. So I have about 500 conversations with Serious Decisions clients per year. That's just me. Multiply that by 6 with people on my team. That's 3,000 conversations. And lately in the conversations that we've been having with sales ops and sales professionals is, look, I want to change the way I'm informing my reps of what's happening. I want to tell them stories instead of giving them data. So that, to me, that's telling them what occurred, why it occurred, and what they can do to try to change the course of action from that point forward.
And I think that's a critical next step, because I talk to reps mostly all day. And the number one thing is, well, how do I do what you're recommending when my manager just wants me to make 50 calls? And
yeah.
It's like, I'm trying to help you sell, not manage your manager.
And in a better world, that rep would be given the information that would inform them on whether or not making 50 calls is the right thing to do or not. They should have a response back to the manager to say, look, the data shows that if we make 50 calls, we're only going to close 2 more. But if we make 25 to highly qualified prospects, then we're going to close 50% more. It's so weird. It seems like we've tried to keep the intelligence within a confined number of people. And the new philosophy is share the intelligence, let people make decisions for themselves.
And I think that's one of the things that's going to come out of all this AI is being able to give reps feedback immediately. Yes. And that's kind of independent of personality or war stories or, differences and approaches that have happened over the years. What is the number one thing that you're hearing from your clients as far as what they're up against?
Right. Well, there's a general playbook that occurs within sales operations. Number one, the sales operations leader goes into a company, and oftentimes the forecast is not accurate. So the number one priority is to try to improve that accuracy, and you can do that. Yeah. And then the number 2 problem is that the compensation plan is not aligned with corporate goals. It's onerous. It's not motivating. So the 2 highest priorities I see from sales and revenue operations people is fixing forecasting, fixing reporting, and then fixing the compensation plan so that they can start to focus on more strategic initiatives that are looking 2 and 3 and 4 quarters out. So what's emerging out of that is trying to get better alignment between sales operations, between marketing operations, and between customer success. So we're seeing the emergence of something that we call revenue operations, where the operations groups are, if they're not merging organizationally, they're at least trying to align better, because the reps are complaining that they're getting too many leads that are not high quality, and marketing is beating their chest saying we're sending all kinds of leads out there and the reps are not following up. And I think companies are tired of that angst between sales and marketing continuing to exist, and they want us to fix that problem.
Especially today, where the need for inbound marketing for just contacts has disappeared. Everyone is now visible.
That's correct. I completely agree.
Yeah. So the only inbound you want are people in market at some levels, at least the curiosity stage.
Yeah, and they've shown some evidence that they're at least interested in what you're doing and what you have to offer. I would say that the next level beyond those tactical fixes that I just mentioned is alignment between sales, marketing, and customer success. Now, customer success is really growing in prominence because of the shift from perpetual product sales to subscription product sales. And most companies are making that transformation. And with subscription, you now have the daily ability to understand how engaged that customer is with the solutions that you've been selling. You can test it on a daily basis. Are they using the solution? Are they happy? Are they getting what they need? And then you can respond much more quickly to that. Now, what happens is that if you don't have a customer success function that's ramped up, the rep takes that responsibility on to themselves, because they know if the customer's not engaged, if they're not happy, they're never going to renew, and they're not going to be a candidate for cross-sell, upsell. And it's a real productivity drain on the rep because they're engaged in post-sales activities. So I think one of the most important things that a company can do, especially in a subscription-based model, is to think about the customer success strategy and try to take that responsibility off the rep as quickly as they possibly can, so the rep can get back to selling and get out of servicing.
Now, let's go back to the compensation plan. What have you seen as far as best practices?
Best practice is to have a compensation plan that aligns with corporate goals and strategies. So that means if the CSO is held accountable for bookings, then the reps and the managers, everyone should be held accountable for bookings. Another best practice is to have no more than 3 quotas set per sales plan, what we call performance measures. And ideally, it's best to have 1, but you've seen those compensation plans where they over-engineer it and they've got 6 different quotas out there. It's ridiculous. The reps can't do it. And then if you're going to have 3, make sure that none of them are ever weighted less than 15%, because reps will not focus on anything that's going to affect less than 15% of their compensation. So make sure it's aligned, make sure it's simple, make sure that it's motivational.
And how about anything that's based off of non-revenue activity, meetings? Does that really make sense?
Well, I'll say it depends. Now, if you're an account executive or an account manager and you've got an existing book of business and you're closing business all the time, it doesn't make any sense to have an MBO for that at all. In fact, you're paid a base salary to take care of that stuff. Now, it can make sense if you're a strategic account manager and you've got a mega account that you're trying to land, and it's going to take 2 years for you to make inroads into that. You can't pay that rep on bookings,
right,
or on revenue. You've got to give them something that pays them for the sales activities that occur. There's 6 different transformation points. There's opportunity identification, opportunity qualification, which is really what an LDR would do, or a strategic account rep trying to get into an account for the first time. And then after that, it's bookings, revenue, cash collection, and customer success. It's most ideal to pay a rep on booking because you're paying for that point of persuasion, and that's what they can affect.
And have you seen a trend towards this 6-month or even a quarterly compensation plan?
We see companies that try to do the 6-month ones. It's somewhat distracting because you're constantly in quota setting mode, and it creates a lot of anxiety for the reps.
Yeah.
So the best one is to try to keep some sort of an annual plan with quarterly motivation. The ones that are really effective is that, let's say you've got an annual quota, but if you pay the rep some spiffs for hitting quarterly targets as they're going along, that it's very motivational and it works.
And you feel the overassignment of no more than 10%? Is that?
Yeah, no more than 10%. You need to have some quota assignment out there because you've got a CSO that's responsible for hitting their number.
Yeah.
They need to have some assurances that they're going to be able to do it. And then they also have some attrition that's going to occur in the organization as they go through. So it's a decent practice to have 10%, but no more than that.
And do you see any companies putting caps on them, or?
Caps are a dirty word in compensation. Of course, I see it all the time. It's a really stupid thing to do. And I'll tell you why, because a sales rep is on what we call an at-risk plan. So there's an implied agreement in an at-risk plan. The rep is saying, I'm willing to put a portion of my compensation at risk based upon my performance. It's the most ballsy thing that you can do as an individual, is to say, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is, and you can compensate me based upon whether I do what you want me to do or not. And implied in that is that you're going to punish them if they don't do it, but you're going to greatly reward them if they overperform. So when you put a cap in, you're putting their compensation at risk, and then you're not giving them any of the upside for doing so. So it's just a really bad idea.
And is the acid test of a good comp plan that the rep doesn't have to have a Excel pivot table to figure out how they get paid, or?
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to do it on the back of a napkin. And the best plan out there is to pay somebody on bookings, to have a tiered compensation structure where they earn accelerators once they get over 100%. Now, there's something that reps, and, sometimes I think about opening a business doing that, where I could help reps understand their own compensation plan. The way that you take your tax forms to your attorney and ask them what it means, sometimes they need that. But the great compensation plan will have a leverage of 3x. So that means if you're a top performer in your company, if you're in the top 10 to 15%, you should have the ability to earn 300% of your target incentive.
Yeah. So
that means if your target incentive is $110,000 per year, that's in addition to your base salary. If you're at 150% of your quota, and that's what your top 10 to 15% of your reps achieve, then you should earn $330,000 in target incentive plus your 110 base. That's the acid test. This is a 3X plan.
I like that. Hey, this has been a great conversation, Dana. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
Sure. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place, but I work for Serious Decisions as well. I'm the practice leader for sales operations strategies. And I'm also on Twitter at Danatarian.
Hey, I love talking about compensation because what I found, if you get the right comp plan and a decent territory, it really works. If you get the wrong comp plan and the management side of it doesn't understand, and everybody kind of gets it that it's not right and it's not working and no one's happy, it just doesn't work. So I hope you enjoyed that episode and learned a little bit more about what sales operations does for us. That would be good to do. Hey, check out me on LinkedIn. I do a bunch of videos on LinkedIn. I post them every day under both my name and the company page, the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling Podcast company page on LinkedIn. If you could follow them, if you see it come by, give it a little thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. Put a little comment if you have a moment. A little share would help out. Hey, are you also checking out Nudge.ai? They're doing some great work. They got great content on there about single-threaded deals, being stuck with one contact at the account. And they're coming out with some new capabilities that we'll be sharing that are going to make your life a lot easier about entering data into the CRM, doing it automatically for you. That's super powerful. Also, to give you an update on the courses, I'm holding the Questions That Sell course. I'm including that with a coupon code if you buy either one of the Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting course, which is all about getting into new accounts, or Closing the Complex Sale course. Now, you can find out all about this at b2brevenue.com. The letter B, the numeral 2, the letter B, revenue.com. You can schedule a time that we can talk it through. Both courses, it's a year-long access. You can pay for it all at once or in 12 monthly payments. It's not a membership thing, though. It's access to the course, which has 3 major components. You get the classic online content. You consume it all at your own pace. It's not gated, so you get 100% access day one. It's not gated by the number of monthly payments. And you also get office hours, which is every other Friday per course, where we get together when we talk about new topics, questions and answers, case studies. Also, one-on-ones and deal coaching. Now, this is a 30-minute, unlimited number of them, where we talk about applying the course to what you're selling, your customers, what your issues that you're facing, how to prevent the bad things from happening and ensure that the good things do happen. So it's really taking your game to the next level over a year-long period. It's not about just, learn this stuff and good luck. It's learn it, apply it, learn some more, become great at it, and take a year to really take your game and your income to where you want it to be, to get feedback, to hear how other people are doing it. And the course is having this network effect in that every time a new student joins, it becomes more valuable because there's more input, more one-on-ones, more questions, more problems are solved. So check it all out at b2brevenue.com. And also check out the two other podcasts, the Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers podcast, as well as the B2B Revenue Leadership Show. That's it. We'll see you next time.